Hello, welcome to Reeling It In. My name is Polly, and this channel is all about true crime and how I love to just reel in information that I have captured from other resources, such as other YouTubers, other forms of social media, the actual media, information that's come from interviews, interrogations, and so on. Why? Well, because I love true crime. And I literally eat, sleep, and drink true crime. It's just a fact. And it's not for the gruesomeness of it whatsoever. I have the queasiest stomach probably in the world. But it is more about just my love of sleuthing and research and how community comes together and law enforcement and how they solve, for the most part, these terrible crimes and bring justice to the families and their victims. And I'm just intrigued by forensics and DNA and our technology, actually. Just, it's like there are no secrets anywhere. You are watched from every place. It's crazy, but it is what it is. But it's those types of things that really, really get me. I came across true crime listening to my very first podcast called Serial. And the one I listened to was Adnan Syed. And I finished that throughout the episode, and over the years followed that till he was eventually released from prison for being wrongly accused of his crime. After that, I was really getting into it, and I started looking for other channels to follow, and I actually came across several, and they are just kind of my staples, my favorites, and that's Hidden True Crime with Lauren Matthias and Dr. John, Annie Elise with 10 to Life, The Interview Room with Chris McDonough, Reporting Live from My Sofa with Paul, and let's see, Paula from Plunder, Gavin Fish, and next year in 2025, CrimeCon is actually going to be in Denver, and I am here in Colorado, and I am going to go. I'm really, really excited for that. This is my first video. Off the bat, I'm going to say I'm probably going to suck. I do not have, sophisticated equipment, sound room, prompters, anything like that. So you are going to see me looking down at my notes. You may hear my dogs barking from time to time, and I apologize for all of that in advance. But you know what? I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I have been afraid. Afraid of looking foolish or not being 100% perfect. And I just decided I'm going to jump in with both feet because everybody started at some point, right? And not everybody was perfect. So with that said, my first video is actually around Maddie Soto. And it's a pretty well-known case in the United States. And it's awful. It's horrific. I put it right up there with Gannon Stauch, with Chad and Lori Daybell, and what they did. And if you're here and you are familiar with the channels that I mentioned, then you know all about them. So, who was Maddie? Well, she was just this beautiful girl who just celebrated her 13th birthday. She was a student at Hunters Creek Middle School in Orange County, Florida, and unfortunately she was reported missing February 26th. According to the Orange County Sheriff's Office, she was reportedly last seen when her mother's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Stephen Stearns, had dropped her off at a church near her school that morning. Stephen Stearns eventually became the prime suspect in Maddie's disappearance, and was arrested after detectives found these very disturbing videos of Maddie being SA'd by Stefan on his cell phone. It's just disgusting. It's horrible. So after a large multi-county search that lasted for several days, Maddie's body was found on March 1st in, I think it's Osceola County. Currently, Stearns is being held without bond and facing multiple charges of sexual battery, possession of child SA material, and ultimately the murder of Maddie. And prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. So that's just a bit of backstory on what I'm going to be covering. And I'm doing it in the form, and I hope this doesn't come across as, messy or anything, but it might. But when you listen to all of these different channels or podcasts, media outlets, and you hear the reporting on them, you have these questions that go, well, wait a minute. What about this? What about that? Just these little things that, and this is where I talk about community and coming together, and how we say, hey, had anybody thought of this? So you're going to hear me interjecting a lot, and hopefully this will flow in a way that is relatively easy to follow, because I've spent a lot of time putting it together. Now, we know that there are tons of documents that have come out in the form of FOIA documents, and FOIA documents are available to the public due to the Freedom of Information Act. Those documents are now shedding light on how Maddie's young body got to where it was and how she ultimately died. And it was at that point that I decided I want to start a YouTube channel. I want to really participate in this as much as I can. So hopefully that as I go through this, as I improve, and as I, just build my subscribers, you all will just help me fulfill a dream. I'm retired. I've had my career, my children. I'm a grandma. And, someone who's willing to jump in with both feet and try something new at a time when typically we're like, yeah, I kind of been there, done that. Not me. Well, since this originally occurred in February and we are now in mid-September, we've all probably seen a lot of interviews coming across YouTube and just the media in general. And the big question for me is kind of like what Stefan's dad, Chris Stearns, said at one point. What is his modus operandi? Why? Why did he do it? Allegedly. Why? So I wanted to try to break it down. Was this premeditated? Was it an accident, or was it some type of encounter? Well, we already know that there was a plan for Stefan to come down and help out with Maddie. Her mom had just started a new job. It was going to be something that was in later hours. And she wanted Maddie around, and she needed the support so Stefan was her best friend. So she's like, I'm going to call Stefan and have him come and help out. And I'm going to assume that it's like Jen said, that McDonald's was planned for Monday morning when Stefan was planned to take her to school, because Jen was going to be resting. She needed to get caught up on some rest. She was very tired. Even though she had Monday off, she needed to get some rest, and it was primarily due to a bipolar disorder that has a pretty huge effect on her, as we've heard. Okay, and anyway, more about that later. But So, yeah, you want to plan to leave a little early to stop and grab some breakfast at McDonald's. We know that the school was about 20-25 minutes from where they lived. McDonald's was, right next to the school. So, Maddie and Stefan get an early start because, according to Stefan, Maddie wanted to have an early start. And he was just so impressed by how quickly she got up, got ready, and they were out the door. And it's like 7:35 when they leave. Now, I'm sure Jen didn't assume that they would be leaving that early. She perhaps might have said something. But why did he have to leave so early? Well, it's pretty obvious. He had to, because this is where it comes in. Well, was there some type of accident, that happened while Stefan and Maddie were upstairs sleeping in that spare bedroom? And, I just recently listened to an interview that was conducted by Lauren and Dr. John from Hidden True Crime, where they're interviewing Stefan's parents, Chris and Deborah Stearns. And part of that interview, Deborah Stearns says that Stefan told them that he put Maddie to bed that night and he went outside to blow off some steam. And when he came back, Maddie was cold. They both said that they didn't believe him. But for me, is it kind of the truth? Maybe it was an accident. Did he perhaps unalive her in a rage? We know from the medical examiner's report that Maddie's hyoid bone was broken, which typically falls in line with strangulation. Going a step further, some cases with strangulation, they are known to be a crime of passion, where the perpetrator is acting out of jealousy or anger. Stefan had recently found out that Maddie had a crush on a boy. Did that make him angry? Did something happen there? Or was it an accident in how we know he gave Maddie her basically anti-anxiety kind of sleeping medicine that night. And we know also from the past that he had double dosed her before. So giving her nighttime meds, did he overdo it? Did he actually get his hands on that anesthetic that law enforcement discovered that he had been researching on his computer? I mean, he already knows that Jen is completely knocked out, and he knows. So if that were the case, then what were his plans? In photo evidence, there are pictures of what's called a fleshlight, not to be confused with flashlight. There's no light involved in this. It's flesh and light, and go look it up. They also found lube, and his boxers just kind of tossed, not even all the way into the hamper. This man is vile. And there was also a tripod. Now, I'm not going to say for certain that it was in room number 4, or if it was in Maddie's little makeshift room, or if there was actually one in both. Either way, this is where I think it was something else and perhaps not premeditated, because all that stuff was left behind, okay? Whatever time Maddie was unalived, he knew that he had to be out of the townhome very early. He had been there long enough and around long enough to know the roommates' routines. And in one of the interviews with the roommate, Natalie, she said that she typically went down around 7:40, 7:45 to make a quick lunch for her son right before they headed out the doors on their way. And then we hear that Jen says that she thinks around maybe 2 a.m. that she thought she heard Stefan come downstairs and use the bathroom. So for me, I'm asking, is this about the time that maybe he felt secure enough that everyone was asleep and now he could move Maddie's body down to her little makeshift room. He couldn't put her in the car at that point. It was too early, and it was too risky. You know, she could be seen. But we don't know for sure because there are no ring cameras, no nearby cameras that were close enough to capture anything of that sort. So I think he probably moved her to that makeshift room, and he had to stay down there with her because he couldn't leave her alone. She was supposed to be up there sleeping with him. He couldn't risk it. And he didn't have to worry about Jen. Again, he knew her with her meds. She was out like a light. I mean, some of her roommates even said that, you know, they had some security issue with a car being stolen or something happening, and that they literally could not wake Jen up from her medicine. And she said herself that her medicine just pretty much knocks her out, but that's what she needs in order for this medicine to work correctly and help her with her disorder. Again, the question, why? Why did he unalive her? I don't think it was premeditated in that he wanted to do it, but maybe something got him at that last second that just blew his mind. Because he saw Maddie as his property for his own satisfaction, and I wouldn't even be surprised to learn that Stefan was actually, or potentially, I'll say, making money from SA material that he had been inflicting upon Maddie for years. I mean, you know, I think about all those packages that Jen says were arriving at her home, at her parents' home. I mean, for somebody that doesn't have a job, who claims to have no money, whose dad has cut him off, what's up with all the packages? They're not free. You know, it's been shown based on those videos, because they're time-stamped obviously, that he had been abusing Maddie for years. And he had Jen just right where he wanted her. And I believe he takes pride in being a master manipulator. He had it made. He had easy access to Maddie. Jen's meds basically, according to her, did away with her libido. She gives multiple reasons why she no longer wanted to be in a relationship with him. Be it she had no libido, or he was messy, or the sex was very vanilla. Whatever the case was, she says ultimately it was like my lack of libido. But I said, and this is where I pop in, okay, if you don't want this relationship because of your libido, then why had you been involved in other relationships? Because one of the things you said is that, or Jen said, is that, you know, perhaps she wanted to be in an open relationships or be open to dating, things of that sort. And Stefan, you know what, after 7 years of being together, you know, he was, I guess, okay with that. So he's fine with it. But I don't know. Here was another thing I caught, and I don't know that I've heard it anywhere yet. Obviously, I can't listen to everything, but there was an initial video where Deborah Stearns talks about Jen, and she said that Jen was bisexual. So for me, I'm asking the question, or not the question, but my thoughts are, well, maybe she is, and so what? That's cool. Maybe she was just tired of his peenie and, you know, wanted something else. And that's totally cool. maybe he was a freak. She mentioned, you know, he had like, even though the sex was vanilla, he had wanted to try some, you know, behind the scenes sex. And she just wasn't having it. And we know in an interview with a former lover, she stated that he pretty much had a limp D unless she was playing dead. I mean, literally laying like face down, not moving, playing dead. And then he was, you know, basically good to go. I don't even want to go anywhere with my thoughts on that because it's just horrific. And then this fool goes on to tell her, this former lover, that, you know, he got a boner one time sleeping next to Maddie. And he jokes about it. I'm like, what? Anyway, so he moves out of Jen's bedroom. He goes up to bedroom number 4, which pretty much gave him his own domain, if you think about it. And so here for me is another kind of gap. Now, it's my understanding that he had to pay rent at that time. Now, was this the time that was he also working at Disney at that time? Or was it he wasn't working and his dad was paying the rent for him? Because Chris does say that he paid for Stefan's rent. But Jen says that he had a job at Disney. Okay, so Stefan says, well, I'm cutting you off. I'm no longer paying your rent. You need to come home. And by the way, I have a job opportunity for you. So he quits Disney to go back home. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Why are you paying this man's rent if he has a job? Now, listen, I am not coming down on him. I know there are plenty of parents that enable children from the start to whenever. And you know what? That's their prerogative. I'm not here to give parenting advice in any form. We know that the job didn't pan out. So Jen and Stefan formed a new plan. And the plan was that he was eventually going to come back and reapply at Disney. But there had to be some time to go by in order for him to be qualified to reapply. And that when he did come back, that they would live not as a couple, but as more like companions. Because, again, they were best friends. These people spent days, hours on FaceTime without actually facing each other, but just to be in the presence of, I guess, their energy, their breathing, something. But he could also be support, help her with Maddie, help her with the dogs. So he knew that he was going to be coming back to an even better situation. I'm going to have my own spot. I'm going to have Maddie. I don't have to sleep with Jen. He may not even have to work for all we know. I don't know. Whatever. So, you know, was it that? I don't know. Another reason that I thought of is, was it because Maddie thought she was pregnant? And detectives are asking Jen about her period and if she'd had one in February, and Jen says no. Now, to me, something is amiss when they are asking her about tracking her period or her period in general. So I think that's what's probably got a lot of us wondering if that were the case. Now we know she'd had her period already for going on several months, but we also know as women that when you're a young girl and you're first starting, your cycle isn't always regular. So, you know, and you're 13, why would you as a mom have really any concern? But obviously it was brought up and brought to the attention. And if the truth of that came out, you know, Stefan would be toast. Done. And then I asked, well, okay, well, was it maybe because she had a crush on a boy? Did that make him jealous? did that cause him to come to the realization that eventually he was no longer going to have her, that she... And did it tell him, what? How could she have a crush on someone else? I mean, I don't know. During an interview with the Stearns parents again, they had mentioned that the day before Stefan left for Kissimmee, that he was acting very strange, that he was anxious and just not himself. And they had never seen him like that before, and that he was actually asking them if they had any kind of like meds to calm him down. And I guess he eventually found some or whatever. But he was going to be making his way down there. This was on Saturday because he was going to head out Sunday morning, I believe, because he was going to be watching Maddie for Jen. Now, I'm asking, okay, Maddie's got this party, okay, and his mom says during this same interview, Deborah Stearns, that she heard Maddie on the phone wanting to ensure, that Stefan was going to come to her birthday party on Sunday. She said she heard her, that she was really wanting Stefan to come. Well, my question on that is, Maddie's party was put on by her family, and her family did not like Stefan. And Jennifer herself said Stefan didn't go to the party because he wasn't invited. So why say, I really want you to come down here, I want you to come to my party? I don't know about that. I'm not saying that she's lying. Maybe she got it wrong. I don't know. But anyway, Stefan knew he wasn't invited. Did he maybe wonder, like, well, perhaps this crush of hers is going to be there, because she did have a few of her friends at the party. And we have heard in a few interviews that Stefan can have quite the temper. In fact, his parents even said that they often felt like they were walking on eggshells. And when he was going to go down there, they welcomed the break from that. And so you wonder, again, or I wonder, I think back on the video where law enforcement has Stefan in there right before they're about to arrest him, and they're questioning him. And one of the questions they pose to him is if Maddie is dating, or if Maddie has a boyfriend. And if you look at Stefan's face, you can see the anger and disgust that he's just almost like glaring at them. But in his soft spoken voice, he's saying, no, she was too young. No, it wasn't time. He was mad. He was mad. Now, my last thought on this, and it's only my thought, and all of this is my thoughts, my opinions, based on my research only. Everything is alleged, unless it's been proven. My last thought on this is related to grooming. And this came as a result of the interview law enforcement had with Jen when she was shown pictures of Maddie being essayed, or she wasn't shown yet, she was told about them. And it was very graphic in the description, and I know we all heard it, of her being essayed by Stefan. And if you listen to that interview, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I did pick up when the detectives asked Jen if she knew that Maddie was sexually active. And Jen said no. Or was she perhaps aware that Stefan and Maddie were actually in a relationship? Or could Maddie have believed that she was in love with Stefan? It makes me ask, okay, well, they're talking about these photos and what they've seen in them. So are there photos of Maddie and Stefan appearing as an intimate couple in these pictures, and that's why they're asking these questions, because again, they're asking these questions. And remember, that's about the time, or at some instance, Jen does say, he was grooming my child. Now, I'm going to read a definition of asexual grooming, and it's very telling, and I think it's a perfect fit. Is the action or behavior used to establish an emotional connection with the minor under the age of consent, and sometimes the child's family, to lower the child's inhibitions with the objective of sexual abuse. It can occur in various settings, including online, in person, and through other means of communication. It is often done in a non-violent or by a non-violent offender. In other words, friendly molesters. These friendly molesters become acquainted with their targeted victim, gaining their trust while secretly grooming the child as a sexual partner to establish a good relationship with a child and the child's family. Child groomers might do several things. They might try to gain the child or parent's trust by befriending them with the goal of easy access to the child. A trusting relationship with the family means the child's parents are less likely to believe potential accusations. Well, we've certainly heard that. Child groomers might look for opportunities to have time alone with the child, which can be done by offering to babysit. The groomers may also invite the child for sleepovers, which would mean opportunistic bed sharing. And we know that Jen said that, Maddie and Stefan would want to have sleepovers because they wanted to watch movies and eat snacks, and Jen wanted to sleep. And we know that eventually she gave in. But, so here's a gap for me. This had been going on for a few years. She didn't know. She didn't really have a job. She was living on disability up until this job she got recently. When did this happen? It appears to me that not all of the photos depict Maddie incapacitated in some form, especially if they're saying, did she believe they were in a relationship? That shows something, that says something different altogether, at least to me. So going on, they might give gifts or money to the child in exchange for that asexual contact for no apparent reason. They commonly will show pornography to the child or talk about asexual topics with the child, hoping to make it easy for the child to accept such acts, thus normalizing that behavior. Listen to this. They may also engage in hugging, kissing, or other physical contact. Now, can we say snuggles and cuddles and in the nook? Even when the child doesn't want it. Many grooming tactics involve isolating a victim through fostering distrust or otherwise sabotaging other close relationships, because this directly weakens the potential support network to process traumatic experiences, increasing the risk of long-term psychological ramifications. Victims can be left having been both isolated from social connections and finding it difficult to form new ones. Children who are groomed, may experience mental health issues, including anxiety, yes, depression, yes, post-traumatic stress. Children were manipulated with a combination of attention, affection, kindness, gifts, alcohol, drugs, money, and privileges. Well, sure sounds like she was groomed. So when Jen says this, does she suddenly have hindsight that Maddie was being groomed, or did she actually know more? Now, Did Stefan groom Maddie so much that Maddie believed they were in a relationship, that they were in love, like law enforcement seemed to imply? And she was a child. She was a young girl. I can remember having, at her age, I was taking swimming lessons, and I had a huge crush on my swim instructor. I even used to think about us getting married. Now, he knew nothing about it, and, you know, certainly there was never any contact outside of classes or training, but I remember having that kind of feeling. So, did Jen find out? Is that what happened? Was there some sort of encounter? Why was a single crock of Maddie's left in Jen's room when we know the other one was found in the trash with her backpack and her laptop? It makes me ask, did something happen in Jen's room? They were initially all supposed to sleep in Jen's room, according to Jen, but then she changed her mind and sent them upstairs so that she could get some sleep. Why was there only one crock in Jen's room and one in the trash? Well, let's get back to the day of Maddie's disappearance. And excuse me, I need to take a drink of water because I don't ever talk this much. In release documents, it states that detectives found surveillance of a car matching Stearns heading to the trash compactor at the complex at about 7:35 on the 26th. They noted a man who investigators say matched the description of Stearns, wearing a red t-shirt, which, remember, Jen said that when she saw him later that morning in her bedroom sitting at her computer desk, that he was wearing a red t-shirt. So it shows Stefan throwing out what looked like a bag of trash into the compactor. A little later at 7:50, surveillance video shows the same car leaving the apartment complex through the back gate with a female wearing a green sweater with her head slumped to the left side and her mouth ajar. So they are now on their way to McDonald's, and Stefan says that Maddie no longer wants McDonald's. She wants to just go to school. So he heads to the school, gets to the parking lot, and decides to make a U-turn because he's going to try to sell her on McDonald's because, you know, he was hungry too. But hold on. Reeling this in, I believe it's in one of Stefan's first interviews, and it was, she was a woman officer, sheriff, something like that. But she pressed him about seeing his vehicle at that time traveling southbound in the direction of Kissimmee. So sorry, I can't say it. And not at McDonald's. And then, of course, he says, oh, that's right. I realized I had forgotten my gate clicker, and he decided that he was just going to go back home and get the gate clicker. And, you know, Maddie was still with him, and he figured, no problem, we have plenty of time to kill. Well, in fact, at 8:19, video shows a male with a red shirt, believed to be Stefan, entering through the front gate of the apartment complex in that same car. And there is still a passenger in the car, believed to be Maddie, in the same position as she was seen before. And I believe it is when they saw that, as they went through these surveillance videos, that they had made the statement that they assumed that she was no longer alive. A funny thing, though, in the interview with the security guard who was at the front gate, he said that Stefan pulled up and said that his gate clicker was not working, and could he just kind of buzz him in. And he noticed someone in the front seat, but didn't pay a lot of attention. Anyway, so he obviously lets him in. Now, in this timeline that I mentioned, that I had was also part of my research, it is noted that due to difficulties with the camera at the rear of the complex, detectives were no longer able to observe any other video of that car leaving through the back gate. In fact, investigators said they did not see the car come through the front gate from anywhere past 8:30 until 4:35 p.m., which tells us that, because we know he came and went, that he must have gone through that back gate. So I don't know. Did he know that back gate had no camera? I don't know. But Stern says after grabbing the clicker, he heads out and takes Madeline to school. Well, again, we know that's not true, because during an interview with Jennifer, she states that at about 8:15 or so, she is suddenly woken up by Stearns coming into her bedroom and trying to leash the dog. She jumps out of bed. "What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm going to take the dog for a walk." And she decides she's going to help him get the leash on the dog so the dog doesn't pee. And he says, "Oh, no, I've got it. Go back to bed." So in one of Jen's initial interviews, where she says she thought she heard noises or heard Maddie talking at about that same time, we come to find out later that she says, in fact, she thinks it was more like cabinets opening and closing. Question, why did he go back? Why? And with Maddie in the front seat, that was so risky. What if what did he need from Jennifer's room? He goes in there, risks waking her up, use the excuse of the dog, and immediately, go to bed. What if she'd have said, "No, I'm up already. I've got to get up in a little bit anyway. Where's Maddie?" What would he have said? What would have happened? Why take that risk? What did he want? Something occurred to him that he made that U-turn and headed straight back home. And it also is very telling to me. Jen never mentions in any of her interviews that Stefan came into the room or at any point asking for this gate clicker. And never once in the very few interviews we have of Stefan does he say he went into Jen's room to walk the dog. So, it's okay, say 8:40-ish, okay? He is now officially dropping Maddie off near school, when we know he's still at Jen's, but whatever. He says she gets out of the car. He's watching her leave in his rearview mirror. He sees her heading in the right direction. Everything looks normal. She's kind of rifling through her backpack, and it's like, dude, why would you say that? You threw her backpack in the trash. Do you really? Oh my God. Anyway, why add the backpack? After he drops her off, he says that he goes cruising around a bit, decides to go to a local vape shop, but doesn't open till 10. He waits a little bit. It still doesn't open. So he goes home. Well, again, let me take a drink of water. Sorry, guys. We know that's not true, because at 9:40 a.m., a video camera shows a vehicle matching the description of Stearns pulling into a Holiday Inn on South John Young Parkway, which is about 20 to 25 minutes from Jen's home. He never went back to the school. They spot a male wearing a red shirt exit the car. He opens the trunk, then he walks over to the passenger side, opens up the passenger door, and carries out what appears to be a limp body and puts it in the trunk of the vehicle. So now it's about 10:30, and according to roommate, I believe her name's Angelica's interview, she said she woke up and came downstairs on Monday at about 10:30. So yeah, that's kind of in line with Stefan being at, the Holiday Inn. He needed to go to what he believed was a secluded space to move Maddie's body and then head back home. She said she saw Stefan. She did not see Jen. She did not see Maddie. And, you know, we all know at this time Jen was at her blood appointment. Angelica states that Stearns seemed to be acting pretty nervous. He was going up and down the stairs, in and out the front door, and that he was also doing some laundry, which she found to be very odd, because we know he was kind of a slob. Yuck. So again, you know, what is he looking for? Why is he there? Is he just waiting for her to leave? Is he moving his... No, I can't even say he's moving his nasty toys out of those rooms because they were found in photo evidence. He had the gall to just like throwing his dirty underwear, haphazardly tossing it to a hamper. Just leave it there. Anyway, Jen says she returns. It's about 11:30. She sees Stefan in her room at her desk computer. And he seems to be messing with his phone. Now I'm saying, okay, you're sitting at her desk computer. Were you on her computer? Were you searching for something? Maybe how to, you know, clear off your phone. Who knows? In his interview, he says that he left after 11 from hanging out with Jen to go back to the vape shop. But in a different interview, he says, oh, wait, it was actually 12:24 or so because I decided to go back to the vape shop for some juice, run some errands, go to the comic store, Target. And sorry, because I'm just not a morning person, and I'm got all this medication in me because I've just been a mess and my mind's not right. Everything's a blur. You know, anyway, this is the time when he supposedly says he went back to this shop, but before he left, he told Jen that he would be back in time for them to go get Maddie from school together. So in a timeline that I reviewed online, documents showed that detectives were able to find a video of a man at that vape store. The man appeared to be a white male who purchased some items and then left. I did not see in the document any details about what time the video was captured or if it even lines up with Stefan's own timeline. I would say not. Between those details given in multiple interviews between the two of them, this now looks like a complete cluster. So no wonder, you know, they're thinking, you know, we know something happened and she had to know something. That's my opinion, and so it begs the question, well, then why haven't charges of some kind been filed against her? I mean, we can probably think of a few just off the top of our head. I don't know. My opinion, once I heard that she was served with an investigative subpoena, and an investigative subpoena is a subpoena that law enforcement agencies can issue if they have reason to believe that someone has violated a chapter of the civil enforcement provisions. A chapter, which there are many. I tried to look through them and it was too much. So I'm not sure what the chapter number was of the subpoena that was issued by the investigative agency. I do know that they are confidential for 120 days after they are issued, and that's probably why they didn't, you know, come out till much later. But this interview actually took place on April 18th, 2024 at the state attorney's office with Jen and her attorney. Before the interview begins, it is stated that she is there with some type of derivative use immunity. And derivative use immunity is broader than simple immunity, which only protects the witness from the use of their own testimony against them. Derivative use immunity protects the witness from any evidence that has been derived from additional investigation based on their testimony. However, derivative use immunity does not prevent prosecutors from gathering additional independent evidence to later use against a witness. So that's pretty strong. The government must prove, though, that it is evidence based on independent, legitimate sources. And I believe this is why they haven't arrested her. They need her. But by doing it this way, I don't believe she's off the hook entirely. So it's not a typical form of immunity. And between the two of them, I can see it. There's still just so many questions and so many gaps. And I believe they just need her to testify against him. They also see in her interviews that she seems to defend Stefan, side with Stefan, support Stefan, say Stefan needs an attorney. After hearing all of this horrendous stuff that they found on his phone that was done to Maddie. And law enforcement sees this, and they see that Maddie does not seem to be the primary forefront focus of her mind, of her heart. Being hit with that kind of news, I would be inconsolable. I would be a ball rolled up on the floor, because they even told her that they did not believe she was alive anymore. I know this because I've lost a child. Not in the same way as Maddie, but I can tell you it is horrible. It is such a dark place that you have to claw your way out of, literally, to come back. So she can say, well, I believe that he did SA her because you've told me, you've now shown me something. I am just not convinced that he murdered her. And they're just baffled. And so again, I say, okay, you just said it, murdered her. How does that alone not make you highly suspicious? He took her to school. He was the last one with her. He was responsible for her. And yet she goes on interviewing, and she calms down, and she appears to even laugh at times. And I'm thinking, okay, she's got a bipolar disorder. And I do know a little something about it because I have a best friend that suffered from this disorder many years ago, before we knew she had the disorder. And because she struggled for it for years, and I saw the difference between being on medication versus being off medication, and the difference is pretty huge. It actually is a very strict regimen that you have to adhere to in order for this medication to work properly. So when Jen describes that regimen, I believe it, because I remember that happening to my friend. When you're not on that medication, you can literally go off the rails, either into a very deep depression, where you cannot get out of bed. I mean, my friend was a single parent with a little boy that she wouldn't go to work. She lost many jobs because she couldn't get herself out of bed. She couldn't open the curtains in the entire apartment. It had to be dark. She didn't bathe. I don't even know if she ate much. And then there's her son, who had to go to school. He had to fend for himself. He had to get food. Some days he didn't even know if he was supposed to go to school. There was no laundry. Some days there wasn't enough food. And eventually her family checked on her, and they saw the state she was in, and they admitted her to a hospital where she got the help she needed and was, fortunately able to live a normal life. The other side of that depressive state is hypermania, and we experienced that as well, where she would not sleep for days, reckless spending, very promiscuous, easy to anger, very defensive, very physical. It was kind of scary. But we do know from an interview that Jen does talk about being hospitalized. And so, you know, I get that. I do. It was awful, and I'm sure, like she says, she never wants to have to go through that again. And I can honestly say, while I am not a doctor, any kind of professional in that area, I only know about my friend. And I do know that if you are more prone to the depressive side, it is not uncommon for people that suffer that to unalive themselves, especially when traumatic events occur. So I asked myself, well, was Jen on some heavy meds, and that enabled her to be what appeared to be a little removed, or like not even associate that that was her child, but more like something, a bad movie she may have seen on television or something. I don't know, but I didn't think so, because her memory for the most part served her right. She was able to recall events. She was articulate. I thought she came across as very coherent. So I don't think she was heavily medicated, at least not to a degree that, I don't know. I'm going to stop because, like I said, I'm not a doctor. Personally, I am not fully convinced that Jen was involved in the murder. I am still on the fence about the essay. And that is mainly because of a comment that she made in another one of her interviews. She said she made it to Stefan, saying she did not want Maddie and Stefan's relationship to turn into a Woody Allen situation. And we all know what that situation was. And I will couple that along with a comment Deborah Stearns recently made on Hidden True Crime, which infers Jen's involvement by way of perhaps making money off of Maddie. What they said was that money was coming in by the handfuls, and that they were both, meaning they felt Jen was culpable, spending it like crazy. It made them suspicious, and that perhaps Jen and Stefan were engaged in some type of enterprise that they were profiting from. I don't know how Deborah or Chris knew that they had all this money, and because, you know, he says he was always supporting him. But is this why she was so supportive of him? Was she afraid that maybe him being Stefan, implicate her in some way? Again, it's just my thoughts. Anyway, getting back to Monday. 12:45, Stefan leaves to run all of his errands. Says he's heading down Highway 192, making a few stops at Target and some comics shops. He was headed to the House of Rolls Games on 192 and Oak Street and notices that he suddenly got a flat tire. He says he pulls over into some plaza, fixes the tire, hadn't fixed a tire in a while, smashed his finger or some nonsense, and then drove back home, where he immediately called Jen and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I left my phone at home again." I doubt it, but not accidentally, obviously. But he says that he had gotten a flat tire and he needed to change it, and the tire was so bad that it shredded. Well, we know that he did not change a tire at a plaza. The Kissimmee Police Department later received a tip that someone observed a man matching Stern's description changing a tire, and deputies with the Osceola County Sheriff's Office arrived to that scene and found Soto's body in Yeah, I'm still recording. Go ahead and go. Sorry, 1 minute. I'm still recording. Yeah, go ahead and go. Sorry, I'm supposed to be going to the gym, but I need to finish this because I feel like I'm doing okay. So back to it. Deputies with the Osceola County Sheriff's Office arrived to the scene and found Soto's body in a green sweater off Hickory Tree Road, which is off Highway 92 in a wooded area. So, reeling this in a bit, you want to say, why there? He wasn't planning on a flat tire. Maddie's body was in the trunk. Where was he going with these errands and her in the trunk? What was he going to do to her? He didn't plan, I don't think, on dumping her body all of a sudden in this place because he didn't know he was going to get a flat tire. And I'm sure he's like, oh crap, flat tire, Maddie's in the trunk. I don't need someone coming along once I pull over to change the tire, asking if I need help, or at worst, what if a police officer comes and tries to help me? So he's in a hurry, and he's got to get off that main road, and he is looking for a place to turn off that is rural, remote, whatever, where he's not going to be seen. But he doesn't have much time because that rubber's flying. It's shredding off of that rim, off that tire. He pulls over onto Hickory Tree Road, which is in Northport, Florida, and that's why we hear about cops asking about him being in Northport, Florida, because he just can't risk going any further. I mean, it's going to attract a lot of attention. Those things start to spark after a while. It's pretty bad. I mean, he could have maybe even gotten in an accident, who knows. So he pulls over, dumps her body, changes the tire, and he's on his way back. We know that law enforcement also found a piece of that shredded tire in the compactor at the townhome complex when he made his final trash dump at 4:35. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, you were in a hurry, you were scrambling, you didn't even think to pick up that piece of tire that was found near Maddie's body. I mean, what telling evidence that was, so easily proven. So Jen decides, okay, he's not here. She tries calling him. He's not answering because, of course, he does not have his phone. She heads off to school. She likes to get there an hour early because she wants to be first in line in the pickup row to get Maddie. So when he calls to apologize and says, I forgot my phone. I'm so sorry. I really wanted to go with you and Maddie. Whatever. So school is now out. Maddie's not coming out, and Jen's seeing that, other parents are in the car line, their kids are in the car, she's got to go. She tries calling Maddie, only to realize that, oh, I have Maddie's phone. Maddie had forgotten her phone that day, which, they both try to say is very typical of her because she has ADHD and is very forgetful. However, when police do I forget what the name of it is, but when they can, look at activity on your device, your cell phone or your smartwatch or something, they see that Maddie almost always has her phone with her. Not that it's typical that she forgets it and leaves it behind. So, I call BS on that. Anyway, so she starts running things through her head. Did I forget to tell her that I was going to pick her up? And maybe she went to my mom's office and waited for me there because typically she'll do that. So she goes there to check, and I'm not entirely sure at this point what the timeline is. However, around that time, Angelica, the roommate, says she's leaving the townhome around 3, maybe I think it's 3:40. And she sees Stefan on the couch and she just says bye. My question is, so he's evidently at the house or townhome at around 3:30ish. How is he captured on the front gate camera coming into the complex? Because he is captured on camera, and this is where he is seen removing what appeared to be the tread of a tire into the trash compactor. And so I'm trying to put together, well, what time was it that Jen actually called Stefan and said, hey, Maddie never made it to school? Was it before he dumped the tread? Or did he dump the tread after he received the call? And it's hard for me to wrap my head, because if they see him come in at 4:30, but the roommate says she sees him around 3:40, did he obviously come through the back gate where there was a camera that really wasn't working? If so, what? He left and then decided to drive in the front gate? That is a head scratcher for me. So during that 2-hour window of 2:35 when he supposedly comes home to the time that, to say 4:35, Chris's dad says that he receives a call from Stefan at about 3:16, and he says that Stefan sounds off. Not sure why, but they chat a while, and Stefan says, oh, by the way, I got a flat tire. And it was so flat, I literally ran the rubber off the wheel. And his dad's thinking, and he asks where? And he says, Highway 192. And he says, well, there are plenty of places to pull off of 192. Why didn't you just pull off and change the tire instead of, continuing to drive on it with a flat? So anyway, we know that. And again, not sure when Jen calls and says, Maddie's not here. You need to come up. You need to come over to my mom's work. But it's at 4:54 that Chris, Stefan's dad, gets another call, and Stefan says to his dad that he is en route to Maddie's grandmother's office because there has been an occurrence. And his dad's thinking, an occurrence? Well, that makes 2 for the day. That's pretty odd. Remember, I believe he was a former police officer. He tells his dad that earlier that morning he had dropped Maddie off near her school, and that when Jen went to pick her up, Maddie wasn't there, and that in fact they found out that she hadn't been there in all day, that she never actually made it to school. He also says there's a good chance she was probably abducted because Stefan says that is a high abduction area for sex trafficking. I don't know how he would know that, but maybe, I'm not going to go there. Anyway, he said that he felt totally responsible. He felt really bad because he dropped her off and he didn't wait with her. Anyway, he was going to keep in touch throughout the evening and let him know how things were going. So Maddie is finally reported missing, and I believe it's by Jen's sister. And they are at Jen's mom's place of employment, and it said that they had to wait about 3 hours for law enforcement to get there. Jen and Stefan, they make their statement based on officers' questions. A few notes that I took away from that interview. You see Jen like she's swaying back and forth very nervously. Stearns, on the other hand, is like walking behind her, and he's calm, and he's kind of like stealthy walking behind her. It's just kind of weird. But now, while I am not a body expert, I was in sales, and they do teach you about some body language technique skills. And while he is calm, his body displays some different things, like taking drinks of water, gulping, like swallowing, indicates nervousness perhaps. Putting his hands in his pockets, crossing his arms. It's known as like torso blocking. They do it when they feel threatened or they want to hold people at bay. So they subconsciously torso block. There's sometimes where he puts his hand or his thumb in his pockets, which is supposed to be a sign that shows a lack of confidence. Head touching, which is self-soothing. It's kind of just a soothing response. But you also see where he tries to monopolize the conversation by repeating what Jen says or using convincing words, such as, it looked the same as every other time. It was the same as every other day. Nothing was out of order. Also, when they were asked what she was last seen wearing, he describes a green hoodie and black or blue pants. And Jen says no, black shorts. And I believe she says this because she believes Maddie was going to be in black shorts because the night before, when she had asked Maddie to lay out her clothes so that she would be ready in the morning for Stefan to take her to school, Maddie told her what she was going to be wearing. But we know that she was actually found wearing the green hoodie, sweater, and pants, which, of course, Stefan knew because he was the last one to see her. I don't know, he may have even been who dressed her because she was in her pajamas that night. And why would she have dressed herself to go to school the next day beforehand? I mean, I just don't see it. So, on Tuesday, the 27th, Orange County Sheriff's Office issue a public release of Maddie's disappearance. And it's on this day that Jen and Stearns have their first official interviews with law enforcement agencies. And this is where it all starts to crumble. That's next time. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. If you stayed here with me, oh my gosh, thank you. 1,000 million thank yous. Please be sure and press that like button, share, subscribe, because I'm excited. I'm going to do more. I may not be as quick off the jump to do it because I like to be informative. I don't want to just share my opinions or, I don't know. I want to be informative based on information that has been validated and is real. I welcome your feedback, input, anything that can help me be better at this because I'm going to do it. And I'm scared. But thanks again. Have a good night.